So, is there anybody who wasn't here last time? All right, then, I'm not going to go through everything. Candidates, you each will have 2 minutes to introduce yourselves, and then we will go to questions that Scott will pose, and he'll rotate the mic around. And I got the timer figured out, so that'll be a little smoother. And at the end, you'll each get 2 minutes closing. And on that note, we don't have any audience questions, Scott, so I think you have your...
Which ones do you want to do?
You can decide, okay? Because we don't have to go the full time, if you don't want to. You know? All right, folks, we're off.
Okay. I don't think there's any other faces, any new faces. There's a few less faces. First of all, I want to start by saying yes, I once did serve in this district, and Joe Gresser asked me tonight from the Chronicle. He asked me, "So are you going to announce tonight that you are now jumping into the race?" And my answer is, Joe, hell no. I've done my time, and I'm leaving that up to two of these fine people. So the first question is, should the legislature...
No.
Oh my, I did it again, Robin. Okay, the first question is, who are you, Brian Smith?
Good evening, and I'm not Scott Wheeler. My name is Brian Smith. I'm from Derby. I've lived in Derby all of my life, and I'm just completing my first term in Montpelier, and I have been serving on General Affairs, and I'm looking forward to another term there if all goes well in November. I've been in the area all of my life, sold cars for 40 years, and I think being a salesman kind of helps me when I'm in Montpelier sitting in a meeting and trying to understand things. I heard the previous panel, one of the panelists said that they're planning to read all of the bills that come before you down there. Well, there were 950 last year, and serving in one committee, we had probably 35 or 40 major bills that we had to look at, and that's why they've got committees in Montpelier. And if you're on a committee, you really need to study your committee and do that. And I'm hoping that with 1 year behind me, I'd like an opportunity to serve on transportation. It's a bipartisan committee of 11, I believe, and there are a number of things in the transportation section that I want to address, and I can get onto that in my tail end of this. I'll be happy to explain a few things that I want, if I can get to transportation. I guess that's up to the Speaker of the House. I'm looking forward to doing another term in Montpelier. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Lynn Bachelor. I am the replacement for Scott Wheeler. When he left, I moved in. And I have enjoyed every moment of it. It's very frustrating at times, but most of the time it's just a wonderful place to be and to work and to have such good people working around me. And we do cross the aisles, and we do the best we can for our constituents. We're not there to vote for what we want. We're there to represent our area and our towns and our villages. When I was first there, it'll be 8 years. When I was first there, I was on Human Services, and we discussed your driver's license and putting your heart and your brain and what have you, all your donors. We made that bill. We made it so you can sign up on your driver's license and you can donate your body parts if necessary for somebody who's in great need. The past several years I have been on institutions and corrections, I had served in the Department of Corrections in Newport for 10 years, and in order to be on that committee, I had to retire. So I have retired from corrections, but I'm now back in the Corrections Committee with institutions as well. Institutions handles, it's a money committee. They handle a lot of money. They take care of our buildings, our state buildings. I heard a rumor, Mike, that boardwalk might be something that you guys can have, but I'm not sure that the state is going to want to fix it first. So anyhow, I have had a wonderful time. I've had wonderful people, and I do hope I can get re-elected to go back and continue my work.
Good evening, my name is Frank Davis. I'll try to answer the question first and give you a little bit of my background. I'm running as an independent. I have run before. I'm a parent of two adult boys. They both got great educations here at North Country. They went on to college and graduate school. I'm a Navy veteran. I served during the 1970s, different time, different war, but I am a veteran. My career was as an educator. I taught from kindergarten through junior high, high school, college, and I even taught in the prison system. I also, after I retired from education, I served as an advisor for the state school crisis planning team, which traveled around the state. My region was the northern 3 counties of the state, giving principals and administrators advice on exactly the kind of thing that we're talking about now in terms of school safety. The biggest crisis in Vermont, fortunately, is not violence by a shooter or an intruder. The biggest school safety issue really is always weather. We do have the crisis we have mostly is weather, and sometimes causes train derailments, trucks with hazmat issues, and other sorts of things. So far in Vermont, we've fortunately only had one fatal shooting, and that was in Essex many years ago. I also, at one time after my retirement, was a state licensed insurance agent, so I know about insurance, health, life, and so on. And currently I am still working part-time as a counseling facilitator for probationers and parolees with the Department of Corrections, but not for the Department of Corrections. I'd like to bring up 2 things, though. When you're a legislator in Montpelier, you must choose wisely what things you're going to work for, what things you're going to vote on, and there are 2 bills that I really would like to discuss, so I may go off topic later when I have more time. And that is, one is a House resolution that was about condemning a federal action, and the other one has to do with the tax, with the appropriations bill that became the budget and taxes, and especially Social Security taxes. And my opponent's votes on that.
Okay, we're back to the first question. Should the legislature address forced school district mergers under Act 46?
No.
This one.
What else should I say? No, I attended, Lynn and I both attended the Charleston meeting the other night, and it was overwhelming. It was 110 to 5, I believe, to not consolidate or not join the Brighton school. That same night, Brighton Elementary voted 51 or 56 to nothing. I'm going to support the people in West Charleston. If Island Pond was in my district, I'd support Island Pond as well. I don't think they should be forced. Each section of the state has different geographic areas, and I think the Northeast Kingdom is unique, and whether they deserve special consideration for Montpelier, I don't know if they do or not, but Montpelier has to look at what these issues are, and if the towns show that they do not want to be part of a consolidation, then the people in that town ought to have every right to say what they think, and they ought to get what they want.
I agree totally. I went to the Holland School meeting where they decided to dissolve their school because they did not want the government to take over their school building. Their school building is the only place that is a social gathering spot for anybody. Their children are being well educated. They have a wonderful school board, and they just decided that was it. They had enough, and although now they're being told it doesn't really matter what they do, the state school board's going to do whatever they want. Pretty much exactly what they said. I also, the next night, I went to Charleston's meeting with Brian, and their school board people said they had gone to meet with the major school board, the state school board, and they told them exactly that. You probably waited too long, and if you decide that you're not going to merge, oh well, you're not going to have a choice. So, I mean, that to me is not right. I'm with my constituents. I agree. Nobody is not getting a good education. They're all well-educated children. They've got wonderful teachers. And I think it's about time that we got government out of the people's business. I don't know how else to say it. Thank you.
To answer the question directly, I also would say no, that the state board should not be telling the school districts what to merge. They shouldn't make it mandatory. Perhaps, unlike Brian's experience, I do believe in reading bills, and I read Act 46. It is 64 pages long, but that, of course, is single-sided and double-spaced and so on. It's not really that long. But what I did discover was that it probably is impossible for the Agency of Education to have done all the things that are required in Act 46. And therefore the State Board probably does not yet have the authority, because the agency hasn't done its job, to actually force the merger. So if I went to Montpelier, I would fight. I wouldn't just go down there and say, well, my people are against it, and they say no, and I say no, and then just go on about my business. Whether I'm on an education committee or a different committee, I would fight. And I think that the state has done the wrong thing, and I would also work on drafting and working with other people who would draft new legislation that would negate Act 46. I wouldn't just say, oh, it's passed, nothing we could do about it. I would actually get out there, and I wouldn't be an invisible legislator. They'd hear about me, they'd see me, I'm not hard to miss, and I would make a ruckus. And I don't think that's been done enough. So that's what I would do. There are specific things that needed to be done step by step by the Agency of Education, and as we know, the turnover in that agency by the governor, who believes in only one thing, and that is staff to student ratios. He doesn't see that anything else happens. As a former educator, as a career educator, I know that in some of my classes, 40 students actually was fine. We could work quite well. In some classes, 20 was too many. So it depends. We should have quality-driven legislation when it comes to law, not bean counter legislation when it comes to education. Education depends on quality. Thank you.
There is a lawsuit against Act 46 that's going on, just for your information.
Okay, this question begins with Lynn. What is your position on gun control?
Similar to the other people who were here before us, I am for the Second Amendment. I think we need more education in our schools about guns, gun safety. My husband has lived in the Derby Line area forever, his whole life, on and off. But he said that when he was in school, they had gun safety classes, hunter safety classes. So people and the children were more acceptable of being able to hold a gun, handle a gun, know what it does, know the dangers. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. But the bills that were passed, I did not vote for them. I didn't think they did much of anything. And I just feel that government overreach. I'm very upset about the school shootings. I have to be. My kids have all gone to school. My grandson is in school. But I'm not sure exactly that banning guns or having a register or some of the other things that have been mentioned here are what is the right thing to do.
Thank you. As far as gun regulation goes, if there is a regulation in the state law that will take away from a law-abiding citizen their gun, then I would vote to repeal that law. I do not think that we need that kind of gun regulation in Vermont. Since around 1974, I have been a gun owner and a hunter. I took my own son through hunter safety school. Actually, we both went through hunter safety school, although I already had my license. I think that it is one of the things that the NRA has done for a long time and that the NRA has done well. There's nothing better to learn than muzzle control. But when it comes to school safety, that's not a gun issue. That is a school safety issue. As I said in my introduction, I worked on the school crisis planning team. And we do have to have the kind of drills, and we have to have the kind of architecture, and we have to have the kind of people in schools who are going to be able to deal with a crisis, and if it happens to be a dangerous intruder coming in, they have to be able to deal with that. And there is no one formula for that. People have to be trained to think on their feet. The administration and the staff, and what we used to do was we would run tabletop drills with them. So we would give them a situation, they would tell us what they would do, we'd throw in a twist on the situation, see what they would do. Because you have to get the leaders in the schools to have a mindset for safety. That's how it's going to work. That is the best thing we can do for school safety. Guns are another issue, and the type, we certainly don't want to have fully automatic weapons in the hands of the ordinary citizen. We don't want to have bombs in the hands of ordinary citizens. We can't say that the right to bear arms is the right to have a cannon or a Stinger missile or anything else. There are certainly sensible limitations, but anything that takes away a gun from a law-abiding citizen, I am against.
Anybody that's in favor of gun control in the state of Vermont probably won't get a job in Montpelier. I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment. I'm a gun owner. Gun safety, like Frank mentioned, is important in schools today. Representative Higley from Lowell has talked a lot about this Eddie Eagle program, and he's pushed hard on it. It didn't seem to fly very much last year, but he's not done with it, and it's a pretty good safety program that could be incorporated into schools. I think if North Country High School can have a bass fishing team, they could certainly have a hunter safety team as well, and they could learn from that. We all started very young owning guns and shooting guns. 8, 9, 10 years old, everybody had a .22 and a BB gun or whatever, but things have changed a lot since the school shootings have happened. There's definitely a safety issue, and I think the schools need to pay close attention and maybe vamp up entryways to their schools. But as far as gun control goes, I think the state of Vermont doesn't need to do anything with gun control. The school happening in Springfield, it was something that never happened. And I think there might have been some knee-jerk reactions to it in Montpelier. But I'm glad nothing did happen there, but anyway, that's my stand on it. I don't think we need to do anything with gun control.
Fair enough.
Okay, this one begins with Frank.
Excuse me.
This one begins with Frank. What are the most pressing issues in your district, and how would you address them?
Well, there are several, but let's consider the fact that the towns are Brownington, Charleston, Derby, Holland, and Morgan. And 4 of the 5 are very small towns with very few services. Probably one of the biggest issues that they're dealing with is transportation. They really don't have much regular public transportation of any kind. In this area, we also don't have Uber, we don't have Lyft. Taxi is rare and not used and kind of expensive. Even in Derby and here in the rest of Orleans County, you cannot get to a train or to a plane without a car. You need a car to get there. Buses don't go there, train service doesn't go there, and I think that, and I guess I have to kind of explain, there is one way to get from here to Williston to do shopping on RCT, but if you miss the bus back, you're out of luck for 2 weeks, because it only runs every other Tuesday. I guess I've done my homework, I've done my research on that. So that's one problem. Another problem is with low-income people. And this will bring me to 2 issues I hope I have time for. One is that we have people who, they get a job here and they do well at it and they are up for a promotion and they can't take it if they're low income because they're getting assistance with child care from the state. And if they take that promotion, they fall off the cliff. So it doesn't pay, do the math, to take a promotion, to advance yourself. So they stay at the lower income, taking more pay from the state, which means the employer doesn't pay them, so the employer is being subsidized by the state as well. At any rate, we need to smooth out that cliff. This has been talked about for at least 8 different campaigns, and nothing has been done about it. I will fight for that when I get to Montpelier. And the other thing that I'm not going to get to my topic yet, but I will get to it. So I think that's 2 things. Development, of course, is another. And the EB5, by the way, it worked fine for Jay Peak. They went too far, and they were not scrupulous.
Which one of us?
Right?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. I think one of the issues in our district is affordable housing. I served 2 years on general affairs, and I listened to a number of different people. Katie Buckley comes to my mind. She's with Rural Edge, I think, or housing, with housing in Montpelier. But anyway, she was in our committee a number of times, and we're trying to put housing together so that it's affordable, not just for low-income housing, but for medium-income. Folks are moving out of here because there's no place for them to live, and they can't afford to keep their home, so they're going south or they're going somewhere else. But Derby is starting to move along. Rural Edge has created some building areas. They've renovated, and I think that's one of the issues in all of the communities. And as far as rural transit goes, it would be nice if there were more transportation in the outlying towns of Charleston and Brownington, but I don't know if you're going to see RCT heading out that way, and I think they're the only show in town, so as far as hitting roads like that. So I don't know what the answer would be to that, but I'm concerned about our senior citizens. They need places to live, they need affordable housing, and it's getting to the point where between inspecting a motor vehicle, some people living in places today get a social security check and they don't know whether to buy oil or buy food or fix their car. And they can't do all three. So affordable housing is probably one of the most important issues in the district.
Oh, let's see. Well, of course, jobs. I live in Derby Line, and we're just about as small as your Morgan and other areas. We don't have any transportation. We never have had any transportation other than our own personal cars or your neighbor or somebody who's willing to take you someplace if you need to go there. What's happening in Derby Line was really scary. We, believe it or not, Senator Leahy signed a letter multi years ago regarding our septic system. Our garbage, our sewerage, goes to Canada to be taken care of. Well, nobody checked on what was going on over in Canada, so our wastewater plant that over there that we share has gone to hell in a handbasket. It's the only way to say it. A&R has been up here. They've been looking. They have contacted Mr. Leahy, and $2 million is the first amount of money that they threw out. And of course, they said to me, well, we know you don't have $2 million in Derby Line. I said, no, not in the beginning. We don't have 2,000 to rub together. So that's something that we have to work on. We have a brand new restaurant, and it's open only from Thursdays to Saturday nights right now until he gets up and going. He has a pulled pork and that kind of business, and it's wonderful, as well as the Derby Line Inn. So we do have some wonderful things that are there and places to come to. That was easy. Thank you.
Back to you, Brian. What should the legislature do about just having one landfill and the leachate it produces?
I attended the meeting at the Gateway the other night, and having one landfill in the state doesn't really seem quite right, especially when you live here in the Northeast Kingdom. It's kind of a hard issue to hit on. There have been other properties in the state that have been permitted to be a landfill. One in Chittenden County, and that happening probably doesn't have much of a chance of happening. I don't like the idea of taking everybody's garbage from New Jersey and Connecticut and Massachusetts and New York. I think it belongs in their own states. This landfill in Coventry, at the risk of the representative from Coventry getting mad at me, is big enough. And if they want to grow and if they want to be permitted more, I'd like to see a little bit of the gravy coming from them around here too. But there's also an issue of part of the landfill has not been lined, and they're afraid to tackle it. I spoke with a lady from A&R the other night, and they're afraid to tackle it because they might stir something up, and they don't want to. We've got 150,000 people at the other end of the lake. Granted, they're not Vermonters, but they depend on Lake Memphremagog for drinking water. And I do know that Casella runs a pretty fine utility up there, but I still think that one person mentioned at the meeting the other night, why can't each county have their own waste area or dump, to call it anything. 14 dumps in the state of Vermont, and let everybody in their own county take care of their own trash isn't such a bad thing to do, I don't think. I'd push for that if I had anything to say about it.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. I also attended the dump meeting, as they called it. I was very surprised that a company as big as Casella has not figured out what to do with the garbage juice. I have a son who has a Class A license in wastewater management in South Florida, and when I asked him, do you take it, or can the wastewater management facility take these extra heavy metals, the asbestos, the leachate that is coming out of a dump? He said, absolutely not. That's not what it's made for, Mom. And when I asked A&R at that meeting, he said, we have to come up with something, but I don't know what it's going to be. Right now, I believe we are transporting some to Montpelier, some to another spot, as well as keeping some here in the Newport wastewater facility. It's something that we really have to sit up and take notice of. Nobody wants the dump in our backyard. We've been the guinea pig for the whole state, whether it's solar power or wind power and taking off the tops of our mountains, and now the dump. So something else has to happen, and we have to get some answers and at least head towards a solution for the garbage juice that is not good for anybody.
Well, like my friends here, I was at the meeting on the 10th, also at the Gateway, and the Canadian representatives are very upset. So far, there's no indication that the leachate is going into the lake at dangerous levels, but I can understand if that's their drinking water source, that they don't want that to happen. I did ask Robert Benoit after the meeting what Sherbrooke and Magog and the other towns along the lake do with their leachate, because just like us, they produce toxins. And he says they have a very simple solution for it. They truck it up to the St. Lawrence River and dump it in the St. Lawrence River, which he says is okay because it's a swift-flowing river and not a lake. So one suggestion might be that we probably are taking some of their solid waste. We could send our leachate to them, and they could do what they do with it because that's acceptable to them. You know, I'm not trying to be funny. It's a very serious problem. First off, we must reduce our solid waste. We must reduce what we are accumulating in terms of bulk. But if the bulk is clean, then building a trash mountain is not such a big problem. And just because it's in my backyard, I mean, if I was simply going to say not my backyard, and that's Brownington, Charleston, Derby, Holland, and Morgan, I would say, gee, we have a hole right here in Newport. We could fill that up with our garbage, you know, make it level. No, of course, that's not what we should be doing. We should be dealing with it responsibly, less waste. But we also have to do it with incentives and not with penalties, because the composting bills that we have are untenable for places with large populations. Chittenden County has too many people to have the area for their waste.
Okay, this one starts with Lynn. What is your position on retail sale and taxation of marijuana products in Vermont?
I don't think we're going to make any money out of it. I think what's going to happen when we tax and regulate is we're going to take that money that we see or feel is going to come pouring in, and we're going to make more places where we can treat people who are addicted, whether it's our opiates or whether it's marijuana. We're going to need more places to help the people that don't know enough or that are addicted. And I don't think I would vote for it. I'm not sure. I don't think, if somebody can show me in their bill that this actually is going to help, I would consider it. But other than that, just tax and regulate, I don't think so.
I would be in favor of taxing, and I would be in favor of regulating. That would be for, the regulation would be for purity. The taxing would be for our revenue source, of course, and overall, it would be, it's legal now in this state, it's going to eventually be legal in every state, and it will eventually be legal in the United States, because just like prohibition not working, this prohibition on marijuana is not working. If you think that because it's against the law, we're going to keep our kids from getting it, you're mistaken. They're getting it now, and they probably want it more because it's prohibited. As far as taxes go, I'd like to bring up a topic that I talked about before, and I know this is going a little bit afield, but the budget bill, which was Act 11, in the House it was H.R. 16, which was passed and then eventually vetoed. My opponents both voted against it. In that bill, I don't know if they read this or not, but in that bill, there is a substantial break for low-income Social Security recipients. Retired people who are getting Social Security and are low-income are going to get a significant break in their state income tax. And middle-income people up to $70,000 joint are going to also get a graduated significant income tax break. If you talk about looking out for our retired people, our disabled, widows and children, then you should have voted for this bill. And it eventually did pass, so it's going to take effect. In our next income tax return, those of us, including me on Social Security, if you are below that certain level of income, you will see a tax break, and they voted against it.
I'd like to get back on your question, Scott. Legalization marijuana got rammed down everybody's throats about 2 or 3 days into the session last year. And before anybody knew it, it was legal. I didn't vote for it. I still wouldn't vote for it. However, it is legal. So right now, I think the state of Vermont probably should take advantage of it and tax it. But in order to tax it, they need to figure out a way that they can control it. And I don't think it was a well thought out law when it passed. Someone had suggested to me the other day that if you want to completely control it, grow it in the prisons. And I laughed a little bit about it when I first heard this, but you might have something to say about it, Lynn, being in corrections, but it would be totally controlled in the prisons, totally manufactured in the prisons and sold in Vermont outlets, if that's what they want to do. And I do think that every tax dollar should go to the education fund to in turn reduce people's property taxes and not take this tax money and create new bills or new programs with the revenue from it. So that's my take on it.
Still have more time, right, Robin?
We are doing good.
Okay. What changes, if any, need to be made to Act 250? Starting with Frank.
Well, Act 250 right now is too complicated. I think it can be simplified. However, in its intent and actually in its result, it has been pretty good for Vermont. Vermont was the first state historically, and this was back in the actually late 19th century, the first state to realize that our environment was at stake. And that was when all these hills in the Green Mountains were denuded of lumber. What we have now is second growth, regrowth lumber, or regrowth timber. And that's because we passed laws that protected our land and our water. If any of you are interested, you look up a wonderful conservationist named Marsh from Vermont. But at any rate, Act 250 has also protected us at times of economic crisis. I'm old enough to remember several times when real estate bubbles have burst, when savings and loan bubbles have burst, and other states were sitting on vacant multi-story buildings, things that were way overbuilt, and Vermont was not. We go about building things carefully, slowly, and well-regulated, and well-financed. And so we did not have the kind of tragic fall off. Now, some people say, you know, when a recession or a depression happens, the rich people are the ones that feel it first, feel it most, they lose the most money, and poor people go, what recession? We don't even realize it happened. But it has insulated us. So in principle, it's a good law and a good bill. But when you are trying to open up a business, build a development, or create something, it is complicated and it needs to be simplified. That can be done through legislation or through regulation. The executive branch has a very significant part to play in making it simpler.
Brian.
I'd agree with Frank Davis on that one. One incident, I'd like to hit briefly on this one incident. When we had our department store, our Walmart store built in Derby, there was an issue of a drainage ditch that runs behind, along Route 5. This drainage ditch was created by a local contractor about 40 or 45 years ago. No water runs through it. I was at work one day and I watched two young women from somewhere, I didn't know where they're from, walking up this ditch with hip boots on. And there was no water in it. And I went out and I talked to them, I said, what are you looking for? And he said, well, this is a stream and we're checking it out for Act 250. And I said, well, it's not a stream, it's a drainage ditch. And they wouldn't hear anything of it. This drainage ditch that the state called a stream cost the developer about $300,000 because he had to design a culvert system to accommodate this ditch. It has water if you get a 8-inch rainfall in one night. And I asked these girls how many fish they had seen in the brook. He said, well, there's not enough water to have fish. So Act 250, I think it has protected the state's interest in the environment, maybe to an extreme in some cases, and I think things need to be individually looked at a little bit better with Act 250.
I have to admit, I don't know as much about the facts of Act 250 as these two gentlemen here do. I do know that some people love it, some people hate it. Some people find that it just gets in their way when they're trying to start something new and they're trying to get their permits and all the rest of these things. And there again, we're back to, let's make it easier for businesses. So we should be able to have a get around someplace. If there's an Act 250 act that is actually impeding somebody building a new business and that Act 250 is not going to hurt anybody, it's just because it's there. So I will not show you my ignorance much more. I will give this back to the moderator.
Okay, the last.
Wrap her up.
Oh, okay, not the last question? Okay. Okay, the boss has spoken, and
Do you
she's,
want longer for their closing comments?
so you want to give him 3 minutes?
Do you want a little longer, or is 2 minutes fine? 2 minutes.
All right, 2 minutes.
3. I'll give everybody 3, and then if you are sure, that's up to you.
Okay, here we go. Brian, you can say whatever you want. If you want to sing, you can sing.
I'm not going to sing. I promise I won't sing. I'd like an opportunity to go back to Montpelier for another term, and I'm really hoping I can get on Transportation Committee. The brine issue came up last year where they were spreading a lot of brine. I sat in on Transportation and spoke with people that came in from Agency Transportation, and they indicated to me that brine is no longer used up here in District 9. Whether it is or isn't, they still have the tanks there, but I'd like to be able to follow up on that with that committee. Last year, I sponsored a bill to come down a little bit harder on texting and driving. And right now, I believe it's a $200 fine and I think 4 points on your license. Texting and driving or distracted driving, however, whatever you want to call it. It's dangerous. It's on the highway all the time, and it's going to start killing a lot more people, especially with legalization of marijuana. And I see someone shaking their head back there, but I sat in on some of these committee meetings and I heard some of the facts from state police. So I think I know a little bit about what I'm saying. If this law can happen, this bill that I'm sponsoring, I had 20 people on both sides of the aisle supporting it. I couldn't get the governor to go along with it. He thought it would take people out of the workforce and they might lose their job. But I want to try it again this year, and if I'm on transportation, it's a bipartisan committee, and I think it'd be an opportunity for me to get that done. So I'm certainly hoping that I can stay with Orleans District 1, and I've returned every phone call I've ever gotten from a constituent, and I'll continue to do so. Well, thank you.
I too hope to be reelected and go back and finish what we started. Working for corrections, we had some real problems, real struggles. We now have initiated it's called MAT, medical assisted treatment, in the prisons. So the women and men are not trying to bring in contraband, although I'm sure it's still there. But they have a system where the nurses and the people there at the correction facility can help the gentlemen get through their crisis and get weaned off of drugs. And I think that was something that we were really excited about. I think we also should have more public service announcements on how to get rid of your garbage. I have a lady across the street from me who throws out every piece of cardboard and it goes in the trash. Why isn't it being recycled? I know the garbage man, it just goes in the back of the garbage truck. People should be made aware. I know it's out there, but people aren't paying much attention. Your containers that you get back from with coleslaw or potato salad or any of those, a lot of them are not recyclable. So why are we having people use them? Let's use the things that we can recycle so we can cut down on the amount of garbage that we're putting in the dump, which of course cuts down on the garbage juice and all the rest of the stuff. One thing just leads to another. I love being down there. I love the people. And I hope to be able to go back and represent all my constituents again. Thank you.
I hope I get elected. I'm not going to go down there to be loved or to like people. I'm going to go down there to stand as a representative for the people who are here and the things that we are actually going to need and the things that are going to help us. Like I would have voted to support a break for Social Security recipients that they voted against. It's also not only about being wise and being knowledgeable, it's also about values. And so I placed on the side table there, for anybody who wants to pick it up, a copy of actually Senate and House Resolution number 2, also known as Act R2. I'm going to read it. It's a joint resolution condemning the recently reversed, that is, the President reversed the policy of separating children from their families at the southern international border, expressing a profound hope that the family separation policy will not be reinstated, and imploring the Department of Homeland Security to reunite the separated families immediately. This was passed 106-17 in the House. And this is about values. This is about family values. There were only 17 representatives who voted not to condemn this policy, even after the President said I'm going to condemn it and I'm going to reverse it. That's in the resolution itself. And Lynn and Brian were two of the people who would not vote to support this resolution. This is about family values. And I certainly would have, and other people in this room, Mr. Marcotte, for instance, voted for it. Vicki Strong voted for this resolution. And another representative from this area, Sam Young, voted for this resolution. Republicans across the board voted for this resolution. I don't understand why, but I hope the voters hold them accountable for why they did not vote for these family values. In addition, I don't have a preference on what committee I would be serving on, and as far as reading bills, I would read bills. I'm a school teacher. I've done my homework all my life. When you ask students to write an essay, you have to read them, bad handwriting and all, and you have to read every single word of every single one of them. It's not impossible to do, whether it's 900 or not. It's your job when you're sent down there. Do your job. I want to be elected. I want to go down there because I will do the job. I'm running as an independent. I'm accepting no money from businesses, corporations, or individuals. Any money I spend will be my own money. If I'm going to spend $10,000 on this campaign, it will be my $10,000. Gee, I hope I save enough in that Social Security break. I don't think so. Thank you very much. I thank everyone here, the press, the moderator, who I once ran against, I believe, and my opponents. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for coming, and thank you to all the candidates. I appreciate you for running, and I thank the press for coming and organizing it, the Chronicle, and the Orleans County Record, or the Caledonia Record, or both, and for NEK-TV for coming. Thank you.